Tina Lichens. I'm a senior vice president here at LightBox. LightBox is a data and technology company providing commercial real estate participants. So this is lenders, brokers, mortgage brokers, buyers, sellers, appraisers, environmental professionals. We provide them the intelligence, the information, and workflow to make and execute better decisions. So our data and workflow facilitates thousands of real estate transactions every month. 50% of the institutional properties sold in the United States uses LightBox's RCM technology. Over 1,100 lending institutions are using LightBox to procure due diligence services. And so this gives us a very unique and broad view of the market. I really like this question because it assumes we're in a recession. And everybody that I talk to assumes that we are either in a recession or on the verge of a recession. It's kind of a definitional difference, with a distinction without a difference. So despite, today's CPI news, all indications are pointing in that direction, right? So inflation is still high. Whether we've turned a corner or not, we shall see. Consumer confidence is not so good. I think that's evidenced by the record Powerball, lottery participation that we saw earlier this week. And the labor market is not looking good. It's clearly, the market's clearly weakening there, and we're seeing significant layoffs across the industry. 90% of the participants in the LightBox Fall Investor Sentiment Survey said that recession is coming, like it's either here or it's coming very quickly. That's probably closer to 100% now, I would guess. But what kind of a recession we're going to see, how hard it will be, how long it will be, how long we're going to see these continued negative indicators, that's a different question. But what does that mean, for us? The top threats that we're hearing are obviously rising interest rates and inflation. Again, despite today's CPI news, inflation is still a real threat. Nobody that I'm speaking to, none of the clients that we're talking to are banking on any kind of soft landing. And then, of course, interest rates have the huge impact on ability to transact. We're seeing that all the time. I was talking with a land broker client of ours a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me he's a little bit afraid to pick up the phone. Every time he picks up the phone, it's another deal that's, either on the verge of falling apart or it's falling apart. People are getting creative to get deals done, but the expectation that rates are going to continue to rise, probably through the first part of 2023, probably peaking in mid-year. That's kind of what we're thinking, what we're seeing. And lenders have either pulled back completely right now. Some institutions are just pencils down, or they're tightening standards until the market normalizes. So that's obviously having a huge impact. So inflation, interest rates being the top concerns. Other factors like supply chain disruption, specifically for construction materials, labor shortages, all that's threatening the ability to get new product on the market and reposition existing assets on schedule and on budget. But they're bright spots, right? It's not all doom and gloom all the time. Industrial sector remains the darling, strong fundamentals, low vacancies around 3%, still strong demand, high expected rent growth. All that paints a great picture for industrial relative to the other asset classes. Multifamily, of course, apartment rates are still rising, albeit not as much or not as quickly as they have. And vacancy is still very low, the lowest we've seen in 40 years. So, even if with that 10% rent growth that we've been seeing is in the rearview mirror, it's still very attractive compared to other asset classes. Some hospitality, if you're in leisure hospitality, might be in a good spot right now, specifically, that leisure travel space. And office is still being recalibrated. We've got, tenants and owners that are trying to reimagine the space that they have. But we are seeing a bright spot in medical office, a little bit in, healthcare and skilled nursing, some of those niche asset classes. they're still seeing increasing rents and expecting, strong sales next year in 2023. The flip side of those bright spots are the asset classes likely to see distress. Listing volume and buyer activity has fallen pretty dramatically since last year at this time. So, I mentioned that the LightBox RCM platform sees about 50% of the institutional, what gets traded on institutionally every year. And we've seen a 35% decrease in deals over the last 3 months from what we saw last year. And that's across the board, all asset classes. Yeah, it's pretty dramatic. Some of our broker clients are, they're telling their clients not to take anything to market right now, because if you have the luxury of waiting and see, it probably makes sense to wait and see. Most all the major investment brokers, like corporately, have announced disappointing earnings, and they're in cost-cutting mode. We mentioned that. And people are expecting that to probably be the case until the second half of next year, right? We're also seeing a decline in buyer activity as measured by NDAs signed. Average number of NDAs has continued to decrease since June of this year. And I expect that probably won't be coming back until, end of Q1, maybe end of Q2 next year. Even if volume, picks back up after the first of the year, we're going to continue to see downward pressure on prices, because of the higher cost of borrowing. Fitch and Moody's said last week that 23% of CMBS coming due in 2023 is unlikely to be refinanced in time. So that's going to, further lead to distress. And anecdotally, we're getting more inquiries about our auction platform across the board. Office assets, retail, even, hotel, where selling now at auction is more profitable, or maybe even the only option that they have if they can't refinance. We're going to figure office out, right? We're going to figure out that right balance between working in the office, working remotely. We're going to figure out how to best use the space that we have to support, the new needs of hybrid office workers, that collaboration space. As the labor market tightens, employers will have more leverage to get people in the office and using the office space. But, the general consensus is that there's just going to be less need for office. But the question is, how much less? Does that mean, 10%, 20%, 30%? We're still figuring that out. In the meantime, we did see sales volumes increase this year, several major markets, but of course, pricing declined across the board. We did see some price increases in Seattle and Los Angeles, but, we have debt maturing, we have major leases that are rolling. So the office picture is still unfolding, and I think we'll get more clarity over the coming months. I don't think we need to expect a long, protracted period of continued uncertainty and volatility. I think that, the next 4 to 6 months are going to be challenging. But I think, once we get toward the middle part of 2023, I think we will have figured some things out. We will have stabilized across the industry and with specific asset types. And I think we will, carry on.